The humid Miami air, even indoors, felt like a heavy, wet blanket pressing down on Eleanor. At 65, her body was not as forgiving as it once was, and the simple task of moving a laundry basket, overflowing with Oliver and Scarlett's clothes, from the washer to the dryer had become an Everest ascent. Sweat beaded on her forehead, tracing paths through her silver hair as she strained, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The basket, ridiculously heavy with Scarlett's damp denim and Oliver's work shirts, seemed to mock her effort. A dizzy spell washed over her, making the brightly lit laundry room spin. She leaned against the wall, trying to steady herself, but the floor tilted beneath her feet. A dull throb began behind her eyes, intensifying with each heartbeat, her vision blurred, dark spots dancing at the edges, before everything went dark. The last thing she remembered was the metallic clang of the laundry basket hitting the tile floor, scattering clothes like fallen leaves. She had been living in this sprawling Miami home for 3 years now. Ever since Oliver Reed, her only son, and his wife, Scarlett Finch, had convinced her it was a win-win situation. They had painted a beautiful picture. Eleanor would sell her modest condo, use the equity to help with their prohibitively expensive house payments, and in return, she'd have the comfort of family, sunny weather, and a life free from the burdens of home ownership. It had sounded perfect, a fresh start, a chance to be closer to her son, to watch her grandchildren grow, though truth be told, the children were rarely there, mostly away at boarding school. Eleanor, ever the optimist, had packed up her life, sold the condo she'd owned for 30 years, and moved south, her heart full of hope and the promise of a golden retirement spent in the warmth of her son's care. Eleanor woke to a throbbing headache that resonated with every beat of her pulse. Her mouth felt like sandpaper, and her limbs were heavy, unwilling to obey. Disoriented, she slowly pushed herself up from the cold tile floor of the laundry room, the scattered clothes still surrounding her like silent accusers. How long had she been there? Hours, certainly. The house was unnervingly quiet. No Oliver, no Scarlett, no sounds of life. A note, neatly folded on the kitchen counter, caught her eye. It was from Oliver, his familiar, angular handwriting. "Mom, Scarlett's mother's birthday party was today. Couldn't miss it. You're not a baby anymore. You can handle being independent for a few hours. There's leftover pizza in the fridge." The words, clean, precise, and utterly devoid of warmth, hit her with the force of a physical blow. A party. His mother had collapsed, possibly for hours, and his priority was a party. Not a phone call, not a check-in, just a cold, dismissive note, as if her well-being was an inconvenience, her presence a burden. Her throat tightened, a bitter taste rising. Independent for a few hours? She felt anything but. She felt abandoned, forgotten, reduced to an afterthought, a memory, sharp and unwelcome, pricked at her. Her sister, Beatrice Vance, had warned her, her voice laced with a familiar cynicism, when Eleanor first spoke of moving in. "Oliver's always been selfish. He knows how to make things sound good for him. Don't let him take advantage." Eleanor, blinded by maternal love and the allure of sun-drenched retirement, had brushed it off, accusing Beatrice of being overly critical. Now, Beatrice's words echoed in the hollow silence of the house, a painful prophecy come true. With a monumental effort, Eleanor managed to pull herself upright. Her head spun, and a dull ache spread across her scalp where she must have hit it. The thought of waiting for Oliver or Scarlett to return, to explain, to perhaps even receive an apology, was quickly replaced by a wave of self-preservation. She needed help. She needed to know what was wrong. Grabbing her car keys from the bowl by the door, she stumbled out, the Miami sun a cruel glare in her sensitive eyes. As she drove, each bump in the road sending a jolt of pain through her head, she clutched her phone, willing it to buzz, to light up with a message or a call from Oliver. Nothing. The screen remained dark, a silent testament to her solitude. At the emergency room, the fluorescent lights felt like daggers. Nurse Chloe, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, efficiently took her information. When asked for an emergency contact, Eleanor gave Oliver's number, a flicker of hope still remaining. Chloe tried calling, but after a moment, she shook her head apologetically. "Goes straight to voicemail, ma'am. Do you have anyone else?" Eleanor, feeling a raw ache of loneliness, simply shook her head. Dr. Isabella Rossi, a young doctor with a serious demeanor, examined her thoroughly. Severe dehydration, Mrs. Reed, and a mild concussion. You really need someone to monitor you for the next 24 to 48 hours. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. Eleanor listened, her eyes fixed on the doctor's concerned expression, but her mind was elsewhere. Who would monitor her? Oliver and Scarlett were at a party. They wouldn't even answer the phone. The bitter realization solidified. She was utterly alone. "I can take care of myself," Eleanor insisted, her voice hoarse. "I'm perfectly capable." She signed the discharge papers, the ink bleeding slightly from the tremor in her hand, desperate to escape the sterile, pitying gaze of the hospital staff. Returning to the dark, empty house was a stark reminder of her predicament. The pizza Oliver had mentioned was indeed in the fridge, 2 cold, congealed slices that held no appeal. On the kitchen island, a stack of envelopes sat neatly. Bills Oliver had asked her to help with that morning. With a weary sigh, Eleanor picked them up. Her eyes scanned the first envelope. It was the electric bill. Her name was at the top. Confused, she picked up another. The mortgage statement. Addressed to her. Another was a credit card statement, detailing a series of extravagant purchases from high-end boutiques and online retailers. The name on that card, linked to her account, was Scarlett Finch. The numbers swam before her eyes, stark and irrefutable. It wasn't helping with the bills. It was her bills. Her name was on everything. Her money, the nest egg from the sale of her condo, was being siphoned away. Not just for house payments, but for their extravagant lifestyle. She wasn't a partner. She was a personal bank. A faint buzz from her phone startled her. A text from Oliver. "Hope you're feeling better." Scarlett says, "Hi. Home late. Don't wait up." It was nearly midnight. She stared at the message, then at her reflection in the dark glass of the kitchen window. The woman staring back was a stranger, faded and diminished, a shadow of her former self. The exhaustion, the pain, the betrayal, all converged into a single, profound realization. She had become invisible. But in the depths of those weary eyes, a spark ignited, a quiet, burning resolve. She would find out exactly where her money was going, and more importantly, she would find out who she had become, and she would get herself back. The morning sun, usually a welcome sight in Miami, felt glaring and intrusive to Eleanor. Her head still throbbed, a dull echo of yesterday's fall, and her body ached in protest. She moved through the kitchen, preparing a weak tea, when the door swung open and Oliver strode in, radiating an irritatingly cheerful energy. He was already dressed in crisp golf attire, a polo shirt stretched over his toned physique, a golf bag slung casually over his shoulder. "Morning, Mom," he chirped, grabbing a protein bar from the counter. He moved with an easy confidence, as if the previous day, and her collapse, had simply never happened. Heading out for 18 holes with Gavin Stone. "Want anything before I go?" Eleanor tightened her grip on her teacup, her knuckles white. "Oliver," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I collapsed yesterday. I ended up in the emergency room." He paused, mid-chew, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes before it was quickly masked by a practiced nonchalance. "Oh, that," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "I heard. Rough day, huh? Look, Mom, I'm really sorry, but Scarlett's mother's party. It was a big family obligation. You know how important appearances are for Scarlett's side, and you said you were just a bit tired. I didn't think it was serious." He shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes. "Besides, you're not a child. You've always been so independent." The words were meant to reassure, perhaps even flatter, but they landed on Eleanor like lead weights, reinforcing her feeling of being an inconvenient problem, easily sidestepped. He finished his protein bar, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and headed for the door. Gotta run. Don't want to miss my tea time. Back later. And just like that, he was gone, leaving Eleanor standing in the silent kitchen, the hollow echo of his casual dismissal hanging in the air. Once the roar of his car engine faded, Eleanor moved with a newfound purpose. Oliver often left his laptop open on the kitchen counter, claiming he was too busy to manage his personal banking and asking Eleanor to help pay bills or check balances. It had always felt like a small act of trust, a way to contribute. Now, it felt like an open invitation to a betrayal. With a trembling hand, she opened the laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a drumbeat of apprehension and dread. She clicked on the bookmark for their joint bank account, the one where her Social Security checks and pension were automatically deposited. She expected to see around $3,000, a decent sum after her monthly deposits and regular household expenses. The number that flashed on the screen stole her breath. $237.42. Her hands started to shake uncontrollably, rattling the teacup on the counter. $237. Where was the rest? She scrolled down, her eyes darting across the screen, trying to make sense of the rows of transactions. Automatic payments to Oliver's personal credit card. Large sums she didn't recognize. Transfers to unknown accounts. And then, the cash withdrawals. Multiple withdrawals, each for hundreds of dollars. On dates when she hadn't left the house. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile these entries with her memory, but there was no explanation, only growing alarm. Then, she clicked on her personal savings account, the one that held the remaining equity from her condo sale. It should have been a healthy $42,000. Her stomach lurched as she stared at the screen. $15,000. $15,000. Nearly $30,000 was gone. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back, a steely resolve replacing the initial shock. She scrolled further, tracing the digital breadcrumbs. Regular, large transfers, not just a few, but a pattern. And there, near the top, a recent transfer of $4,000 to something ominously labeled Reed Family Trust. Just as Eleanor felt the weight of the deception pressing down on her, the elegant swish of Scarlett's silk robe announced her presence. Scarlett glided into the kitchen, looking impeccably styled even at this early hour, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, a delicate scent of expensive perfume preceding her. She picked up a pristine white mug, carefully filled it with coffee, and glanced at Eleanor with a casual, almost bored expression. "Morning, Eleanor. Everything all right with the mess from yesterday? I told Hugo. The cleaning service. You'd handle it today." She didn't wait for a reply, already scrolling through her phone, dismissing Eleanor's well-being with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. Eleanor swallowed, her voice a little rough. "Scarlett," she began, trying to keep her tone even. "I was just looking at the bank statements. What exactly is this Reed Family Trust?" Scarlett paused, her thumb hovering over her phone screen. A flicker of surprise, almost imperceptible, crossed her face, quickly replaced by a cool composure. "Oh, that?" she said, with a dismissive wave. "It's just some financial planning Oliver set up. You know, for tax purposes. Oliver handles all that. I don't really get involved in the nitty-gritty. He's so good with finances, isn't he? Keeps everything in order." She offered a thin, practiced smile, avoiding Eleanor's gaze. "Honestly, Eleanor, I just let him deal with it. As long as the bills are paid, I don't ask questions." The words resonated with a sickening clarity. As long as the bills are paid. Paid with Eleanor's money. Her money was not just helping with the house. It was funding their entire lifestyle. Her Social Security, her pension, her life savings, all meticulously siphoned away, disguised as financial planning and family obligations. Scarlett didn't ask questions because she didn't need to. She knew exactly whose money was paying for her boutique shopping, her elaborate parties, her carefree life. Alone again in the silent kitchen, the laptop screen still open, Eleanor felt a cold, hard certainty settle in her gut. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, or Oliver being a little careless. This was a deliberate, calculated deception. A web of lies carefully spun around her, trapping her, stealing her future. And she, in her trusting naivete, had walked right into it. The fight for her independence, for her very existence, had just begun. The house, once a sanctuary of assumed family warmth, now felt like a gilded cage. With Oliver still out on the golf course, and Scarlett undoubtedly at some boutique or spa, Eleanor began to move through the rooms, no longer as an occupant, but as an investigator. Her gaze, once soft and admiring, was now sharp, critical, discerning. Every object, every piece of furniture, every luxury, was seen through the lens of the vanished $30,000 from her savings and the rapidly dwindling balance of her checking account. She walked into the master bedroom, a sprawling space of muted tones and opulent textures. Scarlett's walk-in closet, a sanctuary of designer labels, now seemed to mock her. She recognized the brand names from the credit card statements linked to her account, the exorbitant sums, the frequent purchases, this silk robe, this cashmere sweater, these Italian leather shoes. They were all bought with her pension, her social security, her life savings. The recently renovated master bathroom, with its gleaming marble and rainforest shower, a project Oliver had gushed about for months, had been funded entirely by a loan from Eleanor, a loan she now realized was simply a direct withdrawal from her savings account, never to be repaid. Next, she ventured into Oliver's home office, a space usually off-limits, deemed too private for her to clean. The desk was meticulously organized, but Eleanor knew now that this order was merely a facade. She began to search, her hands surprisingly steady. She looked for deeds, investment portfolios, any official document bearing her name, any proof of her financial contribution to this house or her supposed stake in her son's life. What she found instead were mostly empty folders labeled investments, property, family trust, an ironic emptiness that perfectly mirrored the void in her bank accounts. The few documents that existed were evasive, filled with legal jargon that cleverly obscured the truth. Then, tucked away in a dusty file marked House Info, she found it. The deed to the Miami home. Her heart pounded as her eyes scanned the official document. Her name was nowhere to be found. Oliver Reed, sole owner. For 3 years, she had been meticulously making those hefty mortgage payments, convinced she was contributing to their family home, building equity, securing her future. Instead, she had been funding Oliver's asset, while he quietly stripped away hers. The betrayal was so complete, so insidious, it took her breath away. Just as the full weight of this discovery settled on her, her phone rang, startling her. It was Beatrice, her sister, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with whom Eleanor had a complex relationship. They hadn't spoken in months, a typical silence born from old disagreements and Eleanor's sometimes exasperated dismissal of Beatrice's blunt warnings about Oliver. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, then answered, "Beatrice? It's Eleanor." "Eleanor?" "Well, hello, stranger. What's wrong? You never call." Beatrice's voice was instantly perceptive, cutting through Eleanor's forced composure. And then, the dam broke. "Beatrice," Eleanor whispered, her voice cracking. "I think I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The kind where I don't know how it happened, but I think I've been paying for my own disappearance." The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered, a confession she hadn't known she was capable of making. She recounted the bank statements, the missing money, the deed, the cold note, the casual dismissal. Beatrice listened in silence, a rare occurrence for her. When Eleanor finished, a heavy pause hung between them. Then, Beatrice's voice, firm and resolute, cut through the silence. "Eleanor, get in your car. Now. Come to my house. Don't tell Oliver or Scarlett anything. Just get here." A sudden sound from outside, the familiar rumble of Oliver's car pulling into the driveway. Panic flared, but Eleanor quickly quelled it. Years of suppressing her own needs for the sake of peace had given her a quiet efficiency. She swiftly gathered the bank statements and the house deed, shoving them into an old, unassuming folder. She tucked the folder into her handbag, zipped it shut, and calmly closed Oliver's laptop, returning it to its usual spot on the counter, just as the front door opened. Oliver walked in, a broad, satisfied smile on his face, smelling faintly of sweat and expensive cologne. "Hey, Mom. Great day on the course. Shot a personal best. What's for dinner?" His casual expectation, his easy appropriation of her time and labor, felt like another subtle insult. Eleanor turned, a serene expression on her face, a stark contrast to the storm raging within her. "I might go visit Beatrice tonight," she said, her voice even, almost detached. Oliver's smile faltered. A frown creased his brow. "Beatrice? Tonight?" "Mom, you know you get confused driving at night. And besides, it's a weeknight. We have dinner plans." He was already trying to assert control, to discourage her, to keep her safely within his sphere of influence. Eleanor met his gaze, a quiet fire in her eyes. "I'll be fine," she replied, a subtle emphasis on the words. "After all, I'm not a baby anymore." The direct jab, a verbatim echo of his dismissive note from yesterday, hung in the air, but Oliver, engrossed in his own self-congratulatory mood, didn't seem to catch its sting. As she drove away from the opulent house that had become her prison, the folder of damning bank statements and the house deed clutched on the passenger seat, Eleanor felt a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't fear, nor anger, not even sadness. It was a surge of strength, a glimmer of purpose. She was no longer just Mom or Eleanor, the easily dismissed and exploited matriarch. She was Eleanor, the survivor, the woman who was finally taking back her own story. The moment Eleanor stepped into Beatrice's modest, but meticulously kept home, she felt a different kind of warmth envelop her. A comfort that wasn't about tropical humidity, but about genuine care. Beatrice, ever observant, took one look at Eleanor's pale face and weary eyes. "My God, Elle, you look like you've seen a ghost. Sit down. I'll make you something to eat." Within minutes, a steaming bowl of homemade chicken soup appeared before Eleanor, along with a strong cup of tea. After Eleanor had eaten, feeling a fragile strength return, she pulled the folder from her bag and spread the bank statements and the house deed across Beatrice's antique dining table. The stark numbers and official documents lay exposed under the warm glow of the lamp. Beatrice, with her sharp mind and practical nature, meticulously reviewed each page, her brow furrowed deeper with every line. The silence stretched, broken only by the rustle of paper. Finally, Beatrice looked up, her expression grim. $27,000, she whispered, her voice tight with disbelief, referring to the money missing from Eleanor's savings. "Eleanor, this isn't just a mistake. This is theft." Eleanor flinched at the word. "Theft? From Oliver?" "No, B. He wouldn't. He's my son." She still clung to the idealized image of her son, the boy who once brought her dandelions on Mother's Day. Beatrice's gaze was unwavering. "Eleanor, what did he do yesterday when you collapsed?" "He went to a party. He left you a note saying you're not a baby anymore. How do you reconcile that, Oliver, with the one who wouldn't steal from his own mother?" Beatrice tapped a finger on the statements. "Look at this. The transfers started almost immediately after you moved in. Not a one-off error. This is systematic, Elle. It's a pattern." Eleanor began to list her contributions, the litany of her unwitting generosity, a bitter confession. "I've been paying $2,300 a month for the mortgage, $400 for utilities, and the credit card payments for Scarlett's shopping, the country club membership for Oliver." Each item she named chipped away at the last vestiges of her denial. "This is classic equity stripping," Beatrice explained, her voice firm but gentle. "It's when someone systematically drains a vulnerable person's financial resources. They isolate you, gain control of your money, and then use it for their own benefit. They exploit your love, your trust." Beatrice leaned forward. Her eyes softened. "Eleanor, think. When was the last time Oliver did something for you? Truly, for you. Without any benefit to himself. A visit that wasn't about asking for money. A genuine concern about your well-being, not just your ability to clean or cook?" Eleanor searched her memory, trying desperately to find an instance, a moment that would prove Beatrice wrong, but the silence stretched, empty and painful. She couldn't recall a single one. The next morning, fortified by Beatrice's presence and a shared sense of purpose, they continued their grim review. They discovered another alarming detail: a credit card in Eleanor's name, carrying a balance of $8,400 for expenses she never made. Lavish restaurant bills, a high-end spa retreat, even a weekend trip to Key West. All charges that painted a picture of a lifestyle Eleanor couldn't afford and never experienced. A chilling thought struck Eleanor. "Scarlett handles all the mail," she murmured, remembering how Scarlett would sort through everything, often commenting on how busy Eleanor's accounts were. The implication hung heavy in the air. Had Scarlett set up this card? Beatrice's eyes blazed. "This is beyond theft, Eleanor. This is fraud. Identity theft. They're not just taking your money. They're using your good name, your credit, to fund their entire luxurious existence." Then came the final, gut-wrenching blow. Tucked within a stack of utility bills, carefully hidden, was a notice for a $15,000 personal loan, taken out in Eleanor's name. The address listed for the loan? Oliver and Scarlett's Miami home. Money she had never seen, never requested, never benefited from. Eleanor finally broke. The tears, held back for days, flowed freely now, hot and bitter. She wasn't just crying for the lost money, but for the loss of her son, for the boy who used to bring her dandelions on Mother's Day, whose small hand she had held so many years ago. "He was so sweet, Bea," she sobbed. "He was such a loving boy." Beatrice held her close, stroking her hair. "Hilda," she whispered, using Eleanor's rarely used first name, a sign of deep affection and concern. "This Oliver, he isn't that child anymore. He's someone who sees your love as a weakness, a resource to be exploited." After a long, emotional embrace, Eleanor wiped her eyes, a new resolve hardening her expression. Together, they called the bank, placing fraud alerts on all Eleanor's accounts. They meticulously gathered every piece of evidence, every statement, every official document, building a damning case against Oliver and Scarlett. As they finalized their plan, Beatrice looked at Eleanor, her expression solemn. "Eleanor," she began, her voice low. "Where do you think they were planning for this to end?" The question hung in the air, chilling in its implication. Beatrice continued. "They've isolated you, bled your finances dry, and when you collapsed, they ignored you. Do you think they were waiting for you to die?" The thought struck Eleanor like a bolt of lightning. She remembered Oliver's persistent disinterest in her health complaints, his casual dismissals of her fatigue, his constant assurances that she was just getting older. She remembered their casual conversations about her problems, always phrased in a way that subtly undermined her health. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "They were killing me slowly," she murmured, the words barely audible. "They were just waiting for me to fade away." Just then, Eleanor's phone buzzed. "Oliver." A call. She looked at the screen, then at Beatrice, a fierce determination in her eyes. She let it ring, let it go to voicemail. "I'm not going to fade away," Eleanor declared, her voice strong and clear. "I'm going to disappoint them. I'm going to fight back." Welcome back to my story. If you're just joining us, you've missed a lot, but don't worry, you can always catch up later. For those of you who've been with me from the beginning, thank you for your support. This next part is where everything comes to a head. Keep watching to see what happens. And if you're enjoying the journey, please like, share, and subscribe to hear how it all unfolds. 3 days later, the doorbell at Beatrice's house chimed. A polite, almost innocent sound that belied the storm it was about to unleash. Eleanor, sitting at the dining table with Beatrice, knew exactly who it was. Oliver. He had called repeatedly since she'd left, a mixture of feigned concern and thinly veiled irritation in his voicemails. Beatrice, ever the protective older sister, answered the door, her expression unreadable. "Aunt Beatrice, so glad I found you," Oliver began, a wide, practiced smile plastered on his face. He held a small bouquet of wildflowers, a gesture so transparent it was almost comical. "Mom, I've been so worried. You just disappeared." "I've been calling everywhere." He pushed past Beatrice with an ease that suggested entitlement, his eyes scanning the living room until they landed on Eleanor. Eleanor remained seated, perfectly composed. The raw vulnerability she had shown Beatrice was gone, replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. "Oliver," she said, her voice calm and even, "I left you a note." "Just like you did for me." The words hung in the air, a direct, subtle jab that Oliver, caught in his performance, didn't immediately register. His gaze, still performing the worried son, drifted to the coffee table. There, neatly arrayed, were the bank statements, the credit card bills, the loan documents, and the house deed, each page a testament to his deceit. The flowers in his hand drooped slightly. His carefully constructed mask of concern flickered, then slipped. His eyes narrowed, the warmth replaced by a cold, calculating glint. "Mom, what is all this?" he asked, his tone now devoid of any pretense of worry, a thinly veiled aggression creeping in. Eleanor gestured to the pile of documents. "This, Oliver, is the record of the $27,000 you've taken from my savings account over the past 2 years. The money I got from selling my condo, money I saved for my retirement." Oliver scoffed, attempting to laugh it off, a forced, hollow sound. "That's absurd, Mom. That money was for household expenses. You were contributing, remember? We agreed to make it a win-win." "Household expenses?" Eleanor retorted, her voice rising slightly, the first hint of emotion piercing her calm. $60,000, Oliver. That's what you've taken in total, not just from savings, but from my pension and Social Security every month. $60,000. Does that sound like household expenses to you? We don't live in a mansion, and even if we did, that far exceeds any reasonable monthly costs for 3 people. Beatrice, who had been observing in steely silence, now stepped forward, her hand resting firmly on the fraudulent credit card statement. "And what about this?" "Oliver," she interjected, her voice sharp. "An $8,400 balance on a credit card in Eleanor's name. Luxury restaurants, a spa weekend, a trip to Key West. Expenses Eleanor never incurred, never approved." Oliver's face flushed. He stammered, his usual smooth delivery gone. That's identity theft. We should report it." Someone obviously got her information. He pointed an accusing finger at the papers, desperately trying to divert blame. "We did report it." "Oliver," Eleanor stated, her voice chillingly quiet. "And the bank traced the application. It was applied for online, from your house, from your IP address." The charming facade Oliver had maintained for so long completely shattered. The mask fell away, revealing not just anger, but a profound contempt. His jaw tightened, his eyes hardening into chips of ice. The son Eleanor thought she knew, the one she had raised, was gone, replaced by a stranger, cold and calculating. "Fine," he spat, dropping the wilted bouquet onto the floor. "So what? You got a place to live, didn't you? Meals, companionship. I let you live in my home. What do you call that, Mom? Payment for services rendered, I'd say." Eleanor stared at him, a profound sadness clouding her eyes. "Is that what you call it, Oliver? Is that what you call abandoning me when I collapsed? When I nearly died from severe dehydration? Leaving me a cruel note because you had a party to go to?" He rolled his eyes, a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Oh, please, Mom. Don't be so dramatic. It was Scarlett's mother's birthday. It was important for our social circle. You're always so oversensitive." Eleanor took a deep breath, her gaze unwavering. She pulled out the last document. The notice for the personal loan. $15,000. Oliver. Taken from Premier Financial. In my name. Money I never saw. For the first time, Oliver seemed genuinely shaken. The anger faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of fear. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure finally cracking. "Look, Mom, That was for Scarlett. For her cosmetic procedures. She was feeling down, pressured by her friends. We were desperate to keep up appearances, to maintain our lifestyle. His voice dropped, a pathetic plea. You weren't using that money anyway, Mom. It was just sitting in savings, earning nothing. Eleanor's heart ached, a deep, mournful pain. Was the plan? Then, Oliver, she asked, her voice barely a whisper, to just keep draining me? Until I had nothing left? Oliver hesitated, then shrugged, a chilling nonchalance returning. We figured. You wouldn't live long enough for it to matter. You're, 75 now, Mom? How much longer could you possibly need it? Eleanor stared at him, the full horror of his monstrous plan sinking in. He had planned for her death, anticipated it, even as a solution to his financial woes. Oliver, she said, her voice sharp with unexpected strength. I'm 65, not 75, and I'm not going anywhere. The miscalculation, the sheer audacity of his plan based on her premature demise, hung in the air, his face contorted, a mix of panic and desperation. It's not fraud when it's family, he blustered, trying to grasp at any straw. You raised me. You owe me. Eleanor slowly, deliberately, began to gather her documents, carefully placing them back into the folder. Her eyes met Beatrice's, a silent understanding passing between them. Then, she looked at Oliver, her gaze full of a profound, heartbreaking sadness, the last vestiges of her maternal love for this version of him dissolving into sorrow. Oliver, she said, her voice clear and strong. I'm cutting off your allowance. She turned, walked past him, and headed for the door, leaving him standing stunned in Beatrice's living room, the wilting flowers at his feet, his world suddenly crumbling around him. The 2 weeks that followed the confrontation at Beatrice's house were a blur of frantic phone calls and incessant texts from Oliver and Scarlett. Their messages swung wildly between feigned apologies, desperate pleas, and thinly veiled threats. Eleanor ignored them all. With Beatrice by her side, Eleanor plunged into the grim task of unraveling the intricate web of deception woven by her son and daughter-in-law. Their first stop was with Mr. David Lee, Beatrice's trusted financial advisor, a man known for his meticulous attention to detail and his unwavering integrity. Mr. Lee, a sharp-eyed man with a shock of white hair, listened intently as Eleanor recounted her story, spreading the growing stack of damning documents across his polished desk. He began to pore over the bank statements, the credit card records, and the loan documents. His initial shock at the estimated $60,000 theft quickly solidified into professional outrage. Mrs. Reed, he stated, his voice tight. This isn't just theft. This is a clear case of elder abuse, financial exploitation. He immediately suggested involving the authorities. But Eleanor, her resolve hardening, shook her head. Not yet, Mr. Lee. I need to understand the full scope, every detail. Together, they dug deeper. The Reed family trust, which Oliver had dismissed as financial planning for tax purposes, turned out to be nothing more than a shell entity. Oliver and Scarlett had established it using Eleanor's social security number, a blatant act of identity theft. Through this trust, they funneled Eleanor's money, meticulously creating fake expenses and phantom investments. A $12,000 transfer, ostensibly for municipal bonds, was traced directly to Oliver's personal account. Mr. Lee, with his expertise, painstakingly traced the flow of money. He uncovered luxury car lease payments for a high-end sedan Oliver had been driving, frequent dining experiences at exclusive restaurants, and a lavish Bahamas vacation Oliver and Scarlett had taken. Eleanor remembered that Christmas. Oliver had told her it was a work conference, leaving her alone in the big, silent house, cooking a solitary meal. The bitter irony twisted in her gut. Her money had funded their escape, their pretense of a perfect life, while she sat alone, believing his lies. The investigation revealed even more predatory behavior. Oliver and Scarlett had systematically used Eleanor's impeccable credit score. They had secured several large loans and lines of credit in her name, running up significant balances, only to pay them off or transfer the debt just before the delinquencies impacted Eleanor's credit rating. They treated her financial standing as a disposable resource, a tool to be leveraged and discarded at their convenience. But the most horrifying discovery was yet to come. It was hidden within a stack of medical and financial papers that Oliver, as Eleanor's designated healthcare proxy, had access to. Mr. Lee uncovered documents for several supplemental death insurance policies. Oliver, without Eleanor's knowledge or consent, had signed her up for them. For the past 18 months, premiums had been meticulously deducted from Eleanor's account, silently siphoning her money. The beneficiaries? Oliver Reed and Scarlett Finch. The total payout for these policies? Over $200,000. Eleanor stared at the documents, her blood running cold. It wasn't just greed. It was a chilling, calculated cruelty. They weren't just stealing her money. They were actively betting on her early demise, preparing to profit from her death. The casual dismissals of her collapse, Oliver's blatant disregard for her well-being, his chilling comment about her age, it all clicked into place, a monstrous plan designed to drain her dry and then collect a final, macabre inheritance. Mr. Lee, his face etched with concern, outlined Eleanor's options: criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse, civil litigation to recover her stolen assets, and immediate protective measures to freeze accounts and revoke Oliver's proxy status. Eleanor listened, her mind racing. "No," she said. Finally. "Not yet. I don't want to play by their rules anymore. I want to play a new game, one where they don't even know the rules." She envisioned Oliver and Scarlett, blinded by their greed, utterly unprepared for what was coming. A quiet satisfaction settled within her. In the days that followed, Eleanor embarked on a different kind of recovery. She went shopping, not for necessities, but for herself: a vibrant silk scarf, a tailored jacket, new shoes that made her feel elegant. She booked an appointment at a salon, trading her dated hairstyle for a chic, modern cut that framed her face, highlighting the renewed spark in her eyes. Each purchase, each snip of the scissors, was an act of defiance, a reclaiming of herself. Then, one evening, she called Oliver. Her voice, calm and clear, held no trace of anger or accusation, only a quiet, resolute strength. "Oliver," she began, "I understand our relationship much better now. You see me as a source of income, not as your mother." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Love, Oliver, is about care, respect, and mutual support. What you've done is not love. It's exploitation." Before he could utter a single word in response, before he could try to manipulate or deny, Eleanor calmly ended the call. The silence on the other end was her final, powerful statement. The week following Eleanor's decisive call to Oliver was a period of calculated, quiet action. While Oliver and Scarlett continued their barrage of calls and texts, each one sounding more desperate and less convincing than the last, Eleanor was busy laying the groundwork for her counteroffensive. She moved with a purpose she hadn't felt in decades, a focused intensity that surprised even herself. Her first priority was securing her finances. With Beatrice providing moral support, Eleanor visited her bank, changed all her passwords, and, with a satisfying click, revoked every single access Oliver had to her accounts. Then, acting on Mr. Lee's advice, she opened new accounts at a different bank, transferring her remaining funds to a place where Oliver's influence couldn't reach. It was a small but significant act of liberation, severing the digital ties that had bound her to their exploitation. Next, she met with an estate planning attorney. The will that had once named Oliver as the primary beneficiary, a testament to her maternal love and trust, was revised. Her assets, meager though they now were redirected to charities and distant relatives who had shown her kindness, effectively cutting Oliver out entirely. It was a painful decision, a final acknowledgement that the son she had loved was gone, replaced by a greedy stranger. Simultaneously, Eleanor meticulously documented every instance of abuse. She wrote down dates, times, specific conversations, financial transactions, And Oliver and Scarlett's insidious isolation tactics. The list grew longer each day, a cold, hard chronicle of their betrayal. This detailed record, Mr. Lee had advised, would be crucial whether she pursued criminal charges or civil litigation. As Eleanor worked, a crucial truth solidified in her mind. Oliver and Scarlett needed her more than she needed them. Their lavish lifestyle, their designer clothes, their luxury cars, their social climbing, it was all a facade, unsustainable without the steady stream of her money. They were financially fragile, living on borrowed time and stolen funds. This realization gave her a powerful advantage, a leverage she hadn't known she possessed. Now, it was time to play her game. Eleanor began dropping subtle hints, carefully crafted to filter back to Oliver. To mutual acquaintances, she would sigh about her loneliness at Beatrice's, her confusion about her future, her uncertainty about her own ability to manage things. She made sure Oliver's friends saw her in public at the grocery store, at a local cafe looking a little disheveled, a little vague, playing the part of the frail, forgetful elderly woman whose mental faculties were slowly declining. It was all a calculated performance, designed to make them believe their plan was still working, that she was exactly where they wanted her, vulnerable, isolated, and ripe for the taking. The bait was taken, hook, line, and sinker. One afternoon, Scarlett arrived at Beatrice's doorstep, a vision in expensive activewear, her eyes red-rimmed and brimming with what appeared to be genuine tears. "Eleanor." "Oh, Eleanor," she cried, rushing forward for an embrace that Eleanor stiffly endured. "Oliver has been so worried. We've both been so worried. We miss you terribly. We just want to make it right." Eleanor, remembering Scarlett's misnaming of her just weeks ago, adopted a fragile, uncertain demeanor. "I don't know, Patricia," she mumbled, feigning confusion. "I've been so confused about everything. It's all just so much." Scarlett dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. "That's exactly it, Eleanor. You need family around you. People who love you, who can help you make good decisions, who can guide you." She glanced at Beatrice, a calculated appeal for support. Beatrice, who had been listening with an impassive expression, nodded slowly. "She has been rather scattered," Beatrice agreed, playing her part flawlessly. "It's a lot for her to manage on her own." Emboldened, Scarlett pressed on. "Oliver and I want to have you back home. We can have a nice dinner, just the three of us, and work everything out. We can talk about a more, structured approach to managing your finances, something that takes the burden off you." Eleanor knew exactly what structured financial management meant. More control for them, more opportunity to drain her dry. I don't know," Eleanor demurred, her voice quavering slightly. Scarlett, sensing victory, beamed. "Wonderful. Just think about it, Eleanor. We love you. We just want what's best for you." She gave Eleanor another air kiss and swept out, leaving behind a faint trail of expensive perfume. The moment Scarlett's car pulled out of the driveway, Eleanor, who had been slumped in her chair, sat bolt upright, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "She fell for it," she exclaimed, a thrill of anticipation running through her. "Every single word." Beatrice looked at her, a hint of concern in her voice. "Are you sure about this, Elle?" Eleanor's smile was unwavering. "I'm not the same woman who collapsed in their living room 2 weeks ago, Bea. Not anymore." She walked to the window, gazing out at the setting sun, a profound sense of power radiating from her. Oliver and Scarlett thought they were on the verge of reclaiming their cash cow. They thought they had won. "I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve," Eleanor whispered, her voice filled with a quiet, dangerous resolve. The truth about who they've been dealing with all along. The drive back to Oliver and Scarlett's house felt surreal. Eleanor held the steering wheel with a firm grip, a strange mix of anticipation and resolute calm settling over her. This wasn't a return home. It was a strategic entry into enemy territory. As she pulled into the familiar driveway, the house glowed with a false warmth, every light on, the air heavy with the aroma of slow-cooked meat. Stepping inside, Eleanor was met with a scene of domestic perfection. The house was impeccably clean, Candles flickered on every surface, and the unmistakable scent of her favorite pot roast wafted from the kitchen. It was a meticulously staged welcome, designed to lull her into a false sense of security. Oliver appeared from the living room, his face etched with feigned relief. He rushed forward, embracing her tightly, a performance of the prodigal son welcoming his mother home. "Mom, you're back." I was so worried. Scarlett emerged from the kitchen, wearing a pristine apron, an apron Eleanor vaguely remembered buying her years ago, her smile wide and practiced, playing the part of the devoted daughter-in-law. "Eleanor, we've missed you so much. Dinner's almost ready." Eleanor returned their embraces with a detached politeness, her eyes subtly scanning the room. On the mahogany dining table, by Oliver's usual place setting, a stack of official-looking papers caught her attention. Her resolve, already ironclad, hardened further. Their performance was good, but not good enough. Dinner began with an uncomfortable cheerfulness. Oliver and Scarlett maintained a superficial conversation, peppering Eleanor with questions about her stay at Beatrice's, feigning interest in her well-being. But beneath their forced smiles and solicitous tones, Eleanor could feel their eagerness, their barely contained anticipation. Their eyes darted towards the stack of papers by Oliver's plate, then back to her, like hungry predators circling their prey. Eleanor ate her pot roast, savoring the familiar taste, a quiet strength growing within her. After the dessert plates had been cleared, Oliver cleared his throat, pushing the stack of documents across the table towards Eleanor. "Mom," he began, his voice taking on a professionally earnest tone. "Scarlett and I have been thinking a lot. We've put together some ideas to make things easier for you. I even consulted with a financial planner, someone who specializes in senior financial management." Scarlett chimed in, her voice dripping with saccharine concern. "Yes, Eleanor. We just want to simplify things for you. Take the burden off your shoulders. You shouldn't have to worry about these things at your age." Eleanor picked up the documents, her heart thumping a slow, steady rhythm. The pages outlined their new plan. They wanted her to sign over power of attorney, legally granting them complete control over her life. All her remaining assets were to be transferred to the Reed Family Trust, and in return, she would receive a mere $800 monthly allowance. A pittance. She looked up, her expression carefully neutral. "And what would happen to my savings and retirement accounts?" Oliver puffed out his chest, the picture of a responsible son. "They would be professionally managed, Mom, for maximum growth and security. And of course, allocated to your care. And to the family's financial stability. Naturally." Eleanor feigned consideration, tapping a manicured finger on the papers. "And for long-term care? Say, if I ever needed a nursing home?" Scarlett quickly interjected. "Oh, Eleanor, don't be silly. We're family. We would handle all of that. You'd never have to worry." Eleanor's gaze settled on Oliver, her eyes piercing. "Oliver," she said, her voice dropping to a low, chilling tone. "This plan, it seems to hinge on a certain timeline, doesn't it? So tell me, directly, how long do you expect me to live?" Oliver and Scarlett exchanged a nervous, wide-eyed glance. Their carefully constructed performance faltered, a crack appearing in their polished facade. Oliver opened his mouth, then closed it, struggling to find an answer. Eleanor didn't wait. She laid down the documents, then reached into her handbag. "Let me tell you something about my finances, Oliver, Scarlett. When I moved in here 3 years ago, I had a net worth of $167,000 in savings, an $85,000 paid-off condo, and absolutely no debt." She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Today," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "my net worth is $62,000 in savings. I own no property. I have $8,400 in credit card debt and a $15,000 personal loan. In 3 years, you have systematically reduced my net worth by over $200,000. Scarlett gasped, an involuntary sound of shock. "Eleanor, how dare you? We've given you a home." Eleanor silenced her with a raised hand. "Don't. I've spent the last 2 weeks, Oliver, uncovering every single detail of your sophisticated game. The systematic destruction of my life savings, my credit, and my future. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with a fierce intelligence they had never seen. What did you think would happen when I figured it out? Scarlett's mask finally fell completely, her face contorted with rage, the veneer of devotion vanishing. You're not going to figure anything out, Hilda, she spat, using the name Eleanor detested. You signed those insurance policies. Legally. You're just a confused old woman. Did I? Eleanor asked, her voice calm, almost dangerously so. She pulled out a thick folder from her handbag, placing it squarely in the center of the table. This folder, she announced, her voice resonating with power, contains a handwriting expert's analysis, proving my signatures on those death insurance policies were forged. She opened the folder, revealing meticulously organized documents. It also contains evidence of the credit card applications, traced to Oliver's IP address, bank security footage, recorded phone calls. Oliver. She paused, letting that sink in. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she pulled out a small digital recorder. And this, she said, her voice chillingly quiet, contains a recording of your own voice, Oliver, admitting that you and Scarlett were just waiting for me to die. Oliver bolted upright, his chair clattering backward, his face a mask of furious disbelief. You recorded us! He roared. Eleanor met his furious gaze, her own eyes alight with a triumphant, undeniable truth. Yes, Oliver. I did. Oliver stared at the small digital recorder, his face ashen, the sound of his own voice confessing his monstrous plan echoing in the quiet dining room. He crumpled onto his chair, his usual composure utterly shattered. Mom, he stammered, his voice pleading. What do you want? How much? We can work out a payment plan. He scrambled for a solution, any solution, that would avert the catastrophe he now dimly perceived. Eleanor didn't answer his desperate question directly. She simply rose from the table, picked up her folder of evidence, and began to walk towards the front door. Every step was deliberate, every movement imbued with a newfound strength. Oliver and Scarlett watched her, paralyzed, a mix of fear and confusion in their eyes. At the threshold of the dining room, Eleanor paused, turning to face them one last time. Her eyes, clear and unyielding, met Oliver's. What I want, Oliver, she stated, her voice calm and powerful, is for you to understand something important. The broken and defeated woman who collapsed in your living room 2 weeks ago? She's gone. Then, Eleanor stepped outside, onto the meticulously manicured front porch, the cool evening air, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere within the house. Oliver and Scarlett remained frozen in the doorway, watching her. The police, Eleanor announced, her voice carrying clearly in the night, will be here in about 10 minutes. They're here to serve you with fraud charges. The district attorney, Oliver, is very interested in your case. She watched their faces crumble, the realization hitting them like a physical blow. The house, I believe, will be seized as part of the investigation. The cars, too, likely. And your country club membership? Cancelled. Oliver's legs gave out beneath him. He sagged against the doorframe, then slid down onto the pristine white steps, his head in his hands. Scarlett, her carefully constructed glamour utterly evaporated, whispered, "Where will we go?" The question, raw with panic, was directed at no one in particular. Eleanor turned, her gaze sweeping over them both, devoid of pity. That, she replied, her voice firm, is not my problem anymore. She paused, her eyes locking with Oliver's. You taught me an important lesson, Oliver. You taught me that blood doesn't make family, and family doesn't give you the right to destroy someone who loves you. In the distance, faint but growing rapidly louder, the wail of sirens pierced the quiet night. Eleanor lifted her chin. I'm 65, Oliver. Not 75, and I've got at least 20 good years left in me. Years I plan to spend with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. Oliver looked up at her, his face streaked with tears. A pathetic, broken figure on the steps of his collapsing empire. I'm sorry, Mom, he choked out, his voice raw. I'm so sorry. Eleanor felt a momentary, fleeting tug of maternal instinct, a phantom ache for the boy he once was. But she pushed it down, replacing it with the clear-eyed understanding of the woman she had become. Her voice, though gentle, held an undeniable edge of finality. You're sorry you got caught. As the first two police cruisers, lights flashing, pulled into the driveway, Eleanor turned and walked away. She didn't look back. Not at the officers emerging from their vehicles. Not at Oliver and Scarlett's shattered faces. Not at the house that had nearly consumed her. She walked towards her future, leaving the wreckage of her past behind. 6 months later, Eleanor sat in her bright, sun-drenched new apartment. It was smaller than Oliver's sprawling mansion, but every corner was filled with light, peace, and the quiet dignity of independence. Across from her, Beatrice laughed, raising a cup of herbal tea. Can you believe we're actually doing this? Europe, a proper grand tour. Eleanor smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. She deserved this. She deserved happiness, adventures, and a life free from manipulation. Oliver and Scarlett, she heard through Mr. Lee and various gossip channels, were living in a small, cramped rental apartment. They were working menial retail jobs. Their once lavish lifestyle, a distant memory. They faced a daunting criminal trial for fraud and elder abuse, and a civil suit Eleanor had filed to reclaim what little she could. The Reed family trust was dissolved, the insurance policies cancelled, and their carefully constructed world had imploded. Occasionally, Eleanor would receive calls from them, or from distant relatives who, having finally heard the truth, now urged her to forgive and forget. She never answered. She had forgiven herself for her naivete, but she would not allow herself to be hurt again. She often reflected on the most important lesson she had learned throughout this harrowing ordeal. It wasn't about the money, or the betrayal, or even the revenge. It was a deeper, more profound truth. Sometimes, she would tell herself, looking out at the vibrant Miami skyline from her own window, the greatest act of love you can perform is refusing to let someone continue hurting you. At 65, Eleanor was finally free, independent, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, for her wisdom and her spirit, not for what she could provide. Her journey of reclaiming her life had just begun, and she was ready for every moment of it.